All right, I'm going to give my critique of the Commander-in-Chief Forum. And to be honest with you, I'm not for either one of these guys, so it's probably going to be a little negative, or maybe a lot negative on both of them. So we'll see what happens.
Decisions a commander-in-chief makes can have a profound and lasting impact on all Americans, but none more so than the brave men and women who serve, fight, and die for our country. What makes tonight's forum unique, some of the questions will be asked by U.S. military veterans who are in our audience. The presidential nominees will appear back-to-back tonight after a coin toss yesterday, won by Mr. Trump. He chose to go second. So that means we begin tonight with the Democratic nominee for president. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hillary Clinton. Nice to see you. Good evening.
Thank you very much. I'm happy you're doing this.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Let me ask you something ahead of time that I'll ask Mr. Trump in a half an hour. To the best of your ability tonight, can we talk about your qualities and your qualifications to be commander-in-chief and not use this as an opportunity to attack Mr. Trump? All right? And I'll ask him the exact same thing.
I think that's an exactly right way to proceed.
Okay.
It's a very important decision for our country, and each of us should be presenting our experience, our expertise, and our plans to protect and defend the United States and our allies around the world.
What is...
All right, let's see how well each of them can stick to not attacking the other person and just basically stating their positions on the questions. I doubt that both of them are going to be able to stick to that. But I honestly think Trump, based on history, will have more of a problem trying to stick to it. Okay, here we go.
The most important characteristic that a commander-in-chief can possess?
Steadiness. An absolute rock steadiness, and mixed with strength to be able to make the hard decisions, because I've had the unique experience of watching and working with several presidents. And these are not easy decisions. If they were, they wouldn't get to the president in the first place. And when you're sitting in the Situation Room, as I have on numerous occasions, particularly with respect to determining whether to recommend the raid against bin Laden, what you want in a president, a commander-in-chief, is someone who listens, who evaluates what is being told to him or her, who is able to sort out the very difficult options being presented.
You're talking about
and then
judgment.
Makes the...
Okay, Matt Lauer is exactly right. She's not talking about steadiness, she's talking about judgment. Okay, I don't know if she wanted to use that word or not, because there's been a pitched battle back and forth on the judgment issue.
Decision. Makes the decision. That's right.
So judgment is a key.
Temperament and judgment, yes.
The word judgment has been used a lot around you, Secretary Clinton, over the last year and a half, and in particular concerning your use of your personal email and server to communicate while you were Secretary of State.
Here we go, and I guess it's better that he gets this email situation out of the way right off the top, because she's never going to be able to escape this email server issue, and that has to do with the Clintons' need for, some would say privacy, others would say secrecy. Just depends on what side of the fence you're on, but obviously that email situation is an albatross around her neck, and we're going to see if it's going to ultimately drown her or not. I doubt it, but you know, there's always the possibility. It just depends on, you know, how much more comes out.
You said it's a mistake. You said you made not the best choice. You were communicating on highly sensitive topics. Why wasn't it more than a mistake? Why wasn't it disqualifying if you want to be commander-in-chief?
Well, Matt, first of all, as I have said repeatedly, It was a mistake to have a personal account. I would certainly not do it again. I make no excuses for it. It was something that should not have been done.
Poor judgment.
But the real question is the handling of classified material, which is, I think, what the implication of your question was. And for all the viewers watching you tonight, I have a lot of experience dealing with classified material, starting when I was on the Senate Armed Services Committee, going into the 4 years as Secretary of State. Classified material has a header which says top secret, secret, confidential, nothing. And I will repeat this, and this is verified in the report by the Department of Justice. None of the emails sent or received by me had such a header.
Were some of the emails sent or received by you referring to our drone program, our covert drone program?
Yeah.
Okay, before we go there, she's in damage control mode. Now, I believe that the answer is sufficient if you want to go there. If nothing was marked top secret, then she does have a little cover, okay, as far as dealing with the documents are concerned. Just a little cover.
Because, of course, there were no discussions of any of the covert actions in process being determined about whether or not to go forward. But every part of our government had to deal with questions, and the Secretary of State's office was first and foremost. So there are ways of talking about the drone program.
And you said you thought you were...
Okay, so now that means that any email that mentioned the word drones should be scrubbed to see if anything non-confidential was discussed within the emails. If in fact that's true, again, you know, she has some cover here, because even though the CIA drone program, quote unquote, is supposed to be confidential, it's the most open secret floating around the world at this point. I mean, and it's pretty much openly discussed amongst other governments and countries. It's just our policy not to discuss our drone program.
Communications of that were fairly routine.
Well, let me say, the FBI just released their report about their investigation. They discussed drone matters in the unclassified section
But
of their
Director
report.
Comey also said this after reviewing all the information. He said there is evidence to support a conclusion that any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
Well, Matt, I just respectfully point to the hundreds of experienced foreign policy experts, diplomats, defense officials who were communicating information on the unclassified system because it was necessary to answer questions and to be able publicly to go as far as we could, which was not acknowledging the program. But I would be in Pakistan, as I was on several occasions. There might very well have been a strike. I would be asked in a public setting, in an interview about it. It was known to have happened. We had to have an answer that did not move into classified area, and I think we handled that appropriately.
You mentioned you're in Pakistan. Some of the emails you sent and received happened while you were overseas, and Director Comey also said that while they have no proof, we assess that it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email accounts.
I guess Comey put that in because, of course, it's possible. Now, if he had said it's probable, I would have given that more weight. Hell, it's possible that I'm going to go out and win the lottery tomorrow. Probable? Hell no. So, but possible covers all bases.
There is no evidence. Of course, anything is possible. But what is factual is the State Department system was hacked. Most of the government systems are way behind the curve. We've had hacking repeatedly, even in the White House. There is no evidence my system was hacked.
Let us bring in Hallie Jackson of NBC News, who's been covering this campaign. She's getting questions from our veterans. Hallie, who are you with?
Hi, madam.
Now, before we start that, in my opinion, it is ludicrous that the government doesn't have the best security in the world. Ludicrous. It's ludicrous that the government is not operating using the best systems in the world. I mean, it's not like they can't pay for them. So, somebody's got to explain to me how come the government's not using state-of-the-art systems, encryption, and everybody else to stop all this hacking. Just a personal opinion.
Lieutenant John Lester, who will stand
Let me
with me
stand
here.
up here.
He began his military career by enlisting in the Air Force and then switched over to the Navy before he retired, where he flew P-3 Orions in Desert Storm and in Desert Shield. He's a Republican, and he has this question for you, Secretary Clinton.
Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, thank you very much for coming tonight. As a naval flight officer, I held a top secret sensitive compartmentalized information clearance, and that provided me access to materials and information highly sensitive to our warfighting capabilities. Had I communicated this information not following prescribed protocols, I would have been prosecuted and imprisoned. Secretary Clinton, how can you expect those such as myself, who were and are entrusted with America's most sensitive information, to have any confidence in your leadership as president when you clearly corrupted our national security?
Well, I appreciate.
Was that a biased question when you clearly violated our national security? Okay. Now, the other problem I have with the stuff like this, he asked this question, she's obviously going to give her answer, but I don't think these guys are able to do any type of a follow-up to rebut any of the answers, unless it's malware. Let's see.
Your concern and also your experience, but let me try to make the distinctions that I think are important for me to answer your question. First, as I said to Matt, you know and I know, classified material is designated, it is marked, there is a header so that there is no dispute at all that what is being communicated to or from someone who has that access is marked classified. And what we have here is the use of an unclassified system by hundreds of people in our government to send information that was not marked. There were no headers. There was no statement, top secret, secret, or confidential. I communicated about classified material on a wholly separate system. I took it very seriously. When I traveled, I went into one of those little tents that I'm sure you've seen around the world, because we didn't want there to be any potential for someone to have embedded a camera to try to see whatever it is that I was seeing that was designated, marked, and headed as classified. So I did exactly what I should have done, and I take it very seriously. Always have, always will.
Sir.
So if that's true, okay, then she had to be operating on two different systems, because if classified information came into her server, they should have been able to find it. So I'm getting a bit confused here. Was she operating on one system or two? If she, I guess what she's claiming is, I guess, is that anything that was classified, she was operating, I guess, on a government system. Anything non-classified was basically being run through her server. So I guess I would love to see how that worked, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Secretary Clinton, let's talk about your vote in favor of the war in Iraq. You since said it was a mistake. Obviously, it was not something you said you would do again. I asked before for people to raise their hand if you served in Iraq. Can you do it again? How do you think these people feel when the person running to be their commander-in-chief says her vote to go to war in Iraq was a mistake?
Look, I think that the decision to go to war in Iraq was a mistake. And I have said that my voting to give President Bush that authority was, from my perspective, my mistake. I also believe that it is imperative that we learn from the mistakes, like after action reports are supposed to do. And so we must learn what led us down that path so that it never happens again. I think I'm in the best possible position to be able to understand that and prevent it. But I will say this, I'm asking to be judged on the totality of my record. What I've done for our veterans, as First Lady, as Senator, what I've done for Gold Star families, working with them to increase the death benefit from $12,000 to $100,000, working with Republicans like Lindsey Graham to get TRICARE for our National Guard members who didn't have health care unless they were deployed, working to provide more support for the care of our veterans, those who were wounded, working with the Fisher family, now into the third generation of caring for our fallen heroes, working with John McCain to raise money for Brooke Medical Center's Intrepid Center to take care of those who are coming back with profound injuries, working on TBI and PTSD and so much more, working with groups to end veteran suicide like TAPS. So
I'm going to
yes,
get to that subject in a second.
there was a mistake. Now, my opponent was for the war in Iraq. He says he wasn't.
All right, so she just, I guess within the first 10 minutes, she's starting to violate the rule about going or quote unquote attacking her opponent. Now, one other point, she said she asked to be judged on the totality of her record. I'm assuming she's referring specifically to her dealing with veterans and their affairs, because there's a whole lot more of her record, but I'm just making that point of clarification.
You can go back and look at the record. He supported it. He told Howard Stern he supported it. So he supported it before it happened, he supported it as it was happening, and he is on record as supporting it after it happened. I have taken responsibility for my decision.
Let me go to another
He refuses to take responsibility for his support.
Let me go to another question.
That is a judgment issue.
Hallie.
Campos, who served in the Air Force for nearly a decade, where she was an intelligence analyst specializing in counter-violent extremism, like you, Secretary Clinton. She's a Democrat, and she has this question for you.
Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, to your point, you have...
Before she asks her question, I'm wondering if that officer who had access to classified information, I wonder if he was satisfied with the answer. They should have at least asked him that.
I've had an extensive record with military intervention. How do you respond to progressives like myself who worry and have concerns that your hawkish foreign policy will continue? And what is your plan to end wasteful war campaigns in which our peers, service women and men, continue to be killed and wounded?
She sounds like a Bernie Sanders supporter. But anyway.
Well, I assume you're talking about Iraq because of my vote, and you probably are talking about Libya because of the role that I played in the administration's decision about whether to take on Gaddafi. But before I get to that, let me say very clearly, I view force as a last resort, not a first choice. I will do everything in my power to make sure that our men and women in the military are fully prepared for any challenge that they may have to face on our behalf. But I will also be as careful as I can in making the most significant decisions any president and commander-in-chief can make about sending our men and women into harm's way. With respect to Libya, again, there's no difference between my opponent and myself. He's on record extensively supporting intervention in Libya when Gaddafi was threatening to massacre his population. And we were able to save lives. We did not lose a single American in that action. And I think taking that action was the right decision. Not taking it and permitting there to be an ongoing civil war in Libya would have been as dangerous and threatening as what we are now seeing in Syria.
I'm going to jump.
All right, so I don't know if she's quick on the trigger, but I damn sure know that she's not scared to pull the trigger, especially based on that answer. So yeah, she is known as far as being hawkish, but I guess that's a self-defense mechanism, because that's the knock on a lot of women, that they don't want to pull the trigger. But I don't think there's anybody out there that thinks that Hillary Clinton's not afraid of pulling the trigger. Anyway, let's continue.
Ben, thank you very much for your question. Let me ask you about the Iran nuclear deal. It was signed under Secretary Kerry. It was begun under you. You
Right.
started those talks. You have said you expect the Iranians to cheat. You think they'll buy time and perhaps stay along their course to building a nuclear weapon. If they cheat, Secretary Clinton, will you have any course of action other than a military course of action? Would you enter into negotiations with them again? Would you go back to economic sanctions knowing they cheated and are then closer to a nuclear weapon?
Matt, look, let me put this in context, because this is one of the most important strategic questions we face. When I became Secretary of State, the Iranians were on a fast track to acquiring the material necessary to get a nuclear weapon. That had happened the prior 8 years. They mastered the nuclear fuel cycle, they built covert facilities, they stocked them with centrifuges, and they were moving forward. What was our decision? Our decision was to try to put together an international coalition that included Russia and China to exert the kind of pressure through sanctions that the United States alone could not do.
Right, but you said that you think you're going to cheat.
Look, this is an important issue. I know we're on TV, we don't have a lot of time.
I want to get to a lot of questions.
I will talk quickly, but I want people to understand this. So yes, I put together the coalition, we imposed the sanctions, we got them to the negotiating table, and after I left, we got the agreement. That agreement put a lid on their nuclear weapons program and imposed intrusive inspections. I have said we are going to enforce it to the
Do you
letter.
think they're playing us?
Real quick, that is a tough question to answer. I don't care which side of the plate that you're on. The thing I liked about her in this particular case is she stuck to her guns and completed her answer.
On the nuclear issue, no. I think we have enough insight into what they're doing to be able to say we have to distrust but verify. What I am focused on is all the other malicious activities of the Iranians. Ballistic missiles, support for terrorists, being involved in Syria, Yemen, and other places, supporting Hezbollah, Hamas. But here's the difference, Matt. I would rather, as president, be dealing with Iran on all of those issues without having to worry as much about their racing for a nuclear weapon. So we have made the world safer. We just have to make sure it's enforced.
How?
I thought that was a pretty good answer, to be honest with you.
I'm with Kenneth Anderson. He's one of our undecided voters here. He considers himself an independent. He earned the rank of sergeant in the Marine Corps, where he was an Arabic translator during 3 tours in Iraq. Kenneth, you have a question for Secretary Clinton.
Yes, Secretary Clinton, last October you said that surveys of veterans showed that they're overall satisfied with their treatment and that the problems with the VA aren't as widespread as they're made out to be. So, do you think the problems with the VA have been made to seem worse than they really are?
Look, I was outraged by the stories that came out about the VA, and I have been very clear about the necessity for doing whatever is required to move the VA into the 21st century, to provide the kind of treatment options that our veterans today desperately need and deserve. And that's what I will do as president. But I will not let the VA be privatized. And I do think there is an agenda out there supported by my opponent to do just that. I think that would be very disastrous for our military veterans. So I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to have a meeting every week in the Oval Office. We're going to bring the VA people, we're going to bring the DOD people, because we've got to have a better fit between getting mustered out and getting into the VA system. Sometimes, and you probably know this, Sergeant, I've met so many vets who get mustered out, who leave the service, they can't find their records from DOD. And those records never make it to the VA. They feel like they're living in a fun house. They have to go over the same things over and over. We're living in a technological world. You cannot tell me we can't do a better job getting that information. And so I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to work with everybody. I'm going to make them work together.
And we're
going to fix the problems in the VA.
Sergeant,
All right. She rambled on, and in my opinion, she needed to drill down further. The VA situation is not a quality problem, it's a capacity problem. They don't have enough capacity built into the system, or they didn't expand the capacity of the system when they went into all of these wars. And in my mind, that was a lack of forward thinking, because when you go into wars, obviously people coming back, you're going to have more people coming back. They were barely able, okay, with the VA as it's currently built out, to handle the Vietnam veterans and the Desert Storm veterans. So when they went into both these wars, they knew damn well that they were going to need more capacity, but they didn't build out to it. And that's the fault of Congress, because they did not allocate them sufficient monies to build out capacity. She should have drilled down into that. So, you know, in my opinion, the answer that she gave was lacking somewhat. It covered some, but it could have covered a hell of a lot more.
thank you very much for your question. Let's talk about veterans and suicide.
Yes, let's,
It's an
please.
alarming story. The population of veterans has a rate of suicide far above the general
20
population.
suicides a day.
What are you going to do to stop it?
Well, this month is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and I've spent a lot of time with family members, survivors, who've lost a loved one after he or she came home, sometimes suffering from PTSD or TBI or sexual assault, being handed bags of opioids, not being given an appropriate treatment to help that particular person, which is something, to go back to the sergeant's question, we have to change. So I rolled out my mental health agenda last week, and I have a whole section devoted to veterans' mental health. And we've got to remove the stigma. We've got to help people currently serving not to feel that if they report their sense of unease, their depression, that somehow it's going to be a mark against them. We have to do more about addiction, not only drugs, but also alcohol. So I have put forth a really robust agenda, working with a lot of the VSOs and other groups like TAPS who have been thinking about this and trying to figure out what we're going to do to help our veterans re-enter civilian life and live full, productive lives.
Hallie?
Well, I guess we got to go to her website to get the specifics. She did, I guess, mention some of the things that she's looking at, but again, this is an area where you need more specifics. If she had given one or two, that would have been helpful. But if the information's on her site, I guess it's, you know, available for anybody to go see. So I guess that question is a bit up in the air until we do a little more research.
I'm with Ernie Young. Come on up here with me, a former Army captain who led troops during tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's an independent voter, and you have a question for the Secretary.
Secretary Clinton, as an Army veteran, the Commander-in-Chief's ability to empathize with service members and their families is important to me. The ability to truly understand implications and consequences of your decisions, actions, or inactions. How will you determine when and where to deploy troops directly into harm's way, especially to combat ISIS?
As briefly as you can.
We have to defeat ISIS. That is my highest counterterrorism goal. And we've got to do it with air power. We've got to do it with much more support for the Arabs and the Kurds who will fight on the ground against ISIS. We have to squeeze them by continuing to support the Iraqi military. They've taken back Ramadi, Fallujah. They've got to hold them. They've got to now get into Mosul. We're going to work to make sure that they have the support. They have special forces, as you know. They have enablers. They have surveillance, intelligence, reconnaissance help. They are not going to get ground troops. We are not putting ground troops into Iraq ever again, and we're not putting ground troops into Syria. We're going to defeat ISIS without committing American ground troops. So
now that's a bad answer, because you never say never as far as committing troops, because there's always the possibility that you're going to do it. But even worse, we got 5,000 ground troops over there on the ground. Now you could say, you know, they're not in combat roles, that they're in advisory capacities, but even that wouldn't be true, because we have a couple of special units that are over there that are charged with going after specific targets. So they definitely are ground troops. So unless she's saying we're going to get all the ground troops out, okay, if she becomes president, she's going to inherit those ground troops that are in Iraq and Syria. So that was a bad answer. She shouldn't have said that. She should have probably said that it'll be a last resort for us to put ground troops into those countries.
those are the kinds of decisions we have to make on a case-by-case basis. And remember, when I became Secretary of State, we had 200,000 troops deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm very grateful that we have brought home the vast majority of those. We have a residual force, as you know, in Afghanistan. We have built up several thousands of the folks that I've talked about who are assisting in the fight against ISIS. But it is in our national security interest to defeat ISIS, and I intend to make that happen. As part of it, we're going after Baghdadi, the leader, because it will help us focus our attention, just like going after bin Laden helped us focus our attention in the fight against al-Qaeda in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border.
I am fast running out of time. I want to get to one that concerns just about everybody in this country, and that is terror attacks on our soil.
Right.
Either directed by ISIS or inspired by ISIS. Would your message as the next president of the United States or potential next president be to Americans that we simply are living in the reality that those attacks will happen? And can you guarantee people that after 4 years of the Clinton presidency, they'll be safer on the streets of San Bernardino or Boston than they are today?
That was a dumb question. Nobody can guarantee that. Nobody's got a goddamn crystal ball. Well, anyway, let's see what her answer is. But that question sucked.
Matt, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that that's the result. I'm not going to promise something that I think most thinking Americans know is going to be a huge challenge, and here's why.
That's a good answer. You can't promise that. So whatever she says basically is a right answer.
We've got to have an intelligence surge, and we've got to get a lot more cooperation out of Europe, out of the Middle East. We have to do a better job of not only collecting and analyzing the intelligence we do have, but distributing it much more quickly down the ladder to state and local law enforcement. We also have to do a better job combating ISIS online, where they recruit, where they radicalize. And I don't think we're doing as much as we can. We need to work with Silicon Valley. We need to work with our experts in our government. We have got to disrupt. We have got to take them on in the arena of ideas that unfortunately pollute and capture the minds of vulnerable people. So we need to wage this war against ISIS from the air, on the ground, and online in cyberspace. And here at home, for goodness sakes, we have to finally pass a law prohibiting people on the terrorist watch list from being able to buy a gun in the United States of America. So we've got work to do. I know we can do that work. I'm meeting with a group of terror experts, counterterrorism experts, but I want to just say one additional thing.
I've got 30 seconds left.
Matt Olson, the former director of the National Center on Counterterrorism, has a great article out today saying the last thing we need to do is to play into the hands of ISIS, going after American Muslims, defaming a Gold Star family, the family of Captain Khan, making it more difficult for us to have a coalition with Muslim majority nations.
And we tried to have
That
an
is not
agreement.
going to help us succeed in defeating ISIS and protecting our American homeland.
Secretary Hillary Clinton. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, okay, I think she did pretty well. She attacked Trump. I mean, she must have done it at least 5 times. One thing, if you notice, she was pretty long-winded on her answers, which limited the number of questions that she took. I wonder how Trump's going to do. I'm going to got to decide if I want to put that together. This is 35 minutes already. I'm going to try to put both of them together, but I may not.